don't understand it. You're changing, no, I can't stand it. My heart can't take this damage.
So what's going on, everybody? Thanks again for stopping by, and this time I wanted to go over some great resources, a lot of them that you probably knew but haven't may not have gone through, or some of them you just may not have known about yet. But essentially this is more for newer people starting out, something that'll kind of get you started, and if you didn't know about it, then great. Hopefully I'll be able to explain why they're important to know. A lot of them are very common websites that developers frequent, and so I think that they're going to be very useful. So the first one that I have up over here, actually before I get into this one, I actually want to stop by Free Code Camp. A lot of people tend to ask me what is the first thing that I recommend that you do, and a lot of other people will recommend books and all this other stuff. And I had a great talk on Twitter with another user, Hashim, who was he's very knowledgeable, and so we talked about people recommending books as the first thing for newer devs to use, and you can do that if that's how you learn. Then that's great. But I think that first, in order to really be able to grasp a lot of the concepts, you have to get down into it and get really into the actual practical use of things. And so I like to recommend Free Code Camp. For one, it's free resources. They do take donations. As you can see over here, they have a little donate button, and you can sign in with your GitHub or Facebook or other accounts. I think I'm under like some, I don't know. The only issue that I see with it is that they have too many OAuth options, and so I don't even know which one is my original account anymore. So that's why a lot of these are shown as like blank, like if I've never done them before. But I actually went through like most of the Free Code Camp stuff. But there's a lot of material here to learn. If I close that, like this whole section, it says 300 hours, and it's all just the basic HTML and pretty much a basic web development stack. So and I think at the end of these you get like a nice little project that they tell you to put together, and you can submit it, and eventually somebody will review it and tell you, you know, a few good things about it or whatever. And you also get certificates for completing a lot of these, and they do hold some weight and value because not everybody can get through all of these. As you can see, 300 hours, like almost all of them. And so you have basically responsive web design, which is all the HTML, CSS, and I think it might have some JavaScript in it. I'm not sure, but it also covers Flexbox and Grid, which are fantastic, and I also do have some resources for that as well. And then it also has JavaScript algorithms and data structures, front-end libraries, which if we open this up, you'll have Bootstrap, which isn't really a front-end library per se. It's kind of a library in a way that I guess it can be. You put it on top of your CSS, and all you really have to do is just drop in a bunch of classes in your HTML, and it'll basically take over from there with a lot of your styling. And it does use jQuery on the back end, and not on the back end but behind the scenes, in order to get a lot of its functionality going. You also have jQuery, Sass, React, Redux, which is amazing. This wasn't there back when I first started, so they're constantly putting in some new cool stuff. Then they have React and Redux together, and then other front-end library projects that you can do, which is cool. We can open that up, and you see it, and they have like some pretty cool projects over here. And then they also have data visualization stuff, API microservice certification. So a lot of this stuff is stuff that like real world companies want. They all want like a lot of companies want you to have microservice experience, you know, and you don't get that in a lot of places. Even in boot camps, you don't get those. But essentially, I think is great. We can open this up and just take a look at it real quick, just to see what the initial stuff looks like. So you open it up, and immediately they have some stuff written down over here. They tell you the basics of everything. You can write your hello world, and over here you'll see it actually print out, so you get to see your output live and all that. So as you're typing stuff, I think it pops out when you run it. So yeah, I don't even have to run it, it pops up, so it already knows what it is. And so that's pretty cool. Over here you can see your error messages and everything, where it basically tells you what it was expecting and versus what you put in. So really cool, very interactive. kind of lets you get into the stuff right away. And I think that's honestly the best way to pick up for somebody like me who's very visual. I like to see what I'm doing, and so other languages were kind of really difficult for me to start off with, just because you're typing a bunch of stuff and you don't really always understand why. And so this made it a lot easier for me to get into code initially and understand it better. So the next one that I have is CSS tricks, and I think that this is one of the least talked about sites, but eventually everybody who builds a website will go into it and just mess with it. But they have so many cool things in here that you just randomly run into. Every time I look up something funky that isn't normal CSS stuff or something, like, I magically end up in here. I never actually this is the first time I've looked at the home page, but normally I end up at one of their articles at some point, you know, so I figured it was worth the mention. Definitely a lot of really cool stuff over here. A lot of it is strictly orientated around CSS. I have seen some other stuff in here, but primarily it's just being able to do some cool stuff. And as you can see, the website looks great. They have a lot of articles, they have some videos, even code snippets. This almanac thing is pretty cool. So a lot of really cool stuff put into a nice, neat little package. And on top of that, if you do decide to get into Flexbox, which is I highly recommend that you do, once you get through CSS and you're feeling comfortable and you want to know what the next level is, you can get into Flexbox, and then eventually you can get into Grid. But if you do get into Flexbox, CSS Tricks has this amazing guide that they just updated, like, I think late last year. But this little guide over here basically it explains all of the properties in a really easy to digest manner for Flexbox, because it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. I do highly recommend that you read all of the stuff over here, just because, like, it's not a lot. Honestly, it's not a lot of stuff to read, but it will give you a good understanding of how Flexbox works, because it does work in different axes. So you have your cross sizing and what they consider your main. So, well, I guess your main and then cross, I don't know. But basically it goes kind of like a X and Y. So you could either be adjusting something on the Y axis, which is going vertically, or you could be adjusting something on the X axis, which is going horizontally. So it's very important to understand that when doing a Flexbox, just because it can be a little confusing on how it works. As you can see, everything on the left works on the container div, and everything on the right works on the child divs. So really good resource. When I was learning Flexbox, I kept this open the entire time. I think for about 4 weeks I didn't close it, because I kept going back into it over and over again, and just having to read little parts here and there, and then going back to my code and adjusting and stuff like that. So really cool to have that. Another great resource is Flexbox Froggy. So this is a cool little game that you can go into it, and it teaches you a lot of the basics of Flexbox and gets you really comfortable in it. Before we started learning this in Lambda, they recommended that we all try this out, and so I hopped into it, and honestly this made it so easy to understand that it just made sense. You just read the instructions over here, follow it, look at your little frog hop around, and do some cool stuff. And then yeah, it was pretty awesome. So in this case, I think they want me to do a justify content, and then flex end, and then see, he moves over to the right, and then you just move over and then go to the next one, and you kind of keep going like that. But it shows you a great way of how you can move things into certain positions that would be otherwise pretty difficult to do if you were just using the box model. So the other site that I want to go over is the Sandbox Dot Io. So Code Sandbox is pretty great. If you've gone into CodePen, it's very similar, except that it's more, you can use it for vanilla JavaScript and all that, but I like to use it more for messing around with frameworks and libraries. And so I like the fact that you can extend a lot of React stuff into here. So once you get into React, this is definitely a good place to mess with mockups and just try out some code. And if you want to share something with somebody, you could pretty much drop it in here. It does have an option that lets you basically rip something directly from GitHub and bring it in here. So that's really cool. But you can pretty much build a bunch of stuff here, and it even has a little slot over here for dependencies. So if you wanted to add extra things, like I want to add let's say one of my favorite packages, Moment, so I can just add that, or I can add emotion for styling and all that, you know. So it has a lot of the stuff, and it is up to date. Currently this isn't up to date just because I would have to hit this little refresh button, and that would pretty much bring it up to, I think the latest is like 16.4 or something like that. So this one's pretty old, but it comes with the entire Create React app setup. So if you're comfortable with that, then you should definitely be fine, and check this out. Another great resource that a lot of people may or may not know about starting off is MDN. MDN is invaluable. This is basically like it's the Bible to JavaScript, and even in some cases CSS and HTML. They have a lot of that in there, but I mainly go in here just for a lot of the JavaScript stuff, just because it covers a lot of stuff in detail. So if you want to look up something like let's say slice, you can come in here, and it's a little bit difficult if you're looking for it over here, but you can look at array.prototype.slice, and it tells you up here immediately what it does. It shows you some cool little examples. Then over here in the syntax area, and a lot of this can be very overwhelming, but just remember that they don't always fill out all the stuff in here. So just once you're looking at this, you'll see array.slice. This will tell you that this is the beginning and this is the end, and then it'll tell you what is optional. So the beginning can be optional, the end can be optional, and it goes into details. Then it goes into more descriptions and more examples, and it gives you basically a lot of stuff. It tells you cross-browser behaviors, gives you the specifications for it, pretty much tells you compatibility. So a lot of really cool stuff it gives you. I definitely recommend that as you're learning JavaScript, you frequent this site constantly, even if you think that you understand the array method or function or built-in, like whatever that you're using. This thing covers a lot more than just array methods. It also covers things with DOM manipulation, covers just about anything JavaScript. So I highly recommend that you go in here and get really comfortable. It might be overwhelming and feel a little weird at first, but after a little while I think you'll get used to it. Another great resource is W3 Schools. W3 School is very much like MDN, except that it's probably a lot more user friendly. They give a lot, I would say a lot better, more usable examples. And they also have some tutorials that you can go through. They have some great SQL tutorials that I used when I was going through here. So they also have a lot of the commands over here that you can use in SQL. So if you want to learn some SQL, that's a great place. But they also have a lot of really cool JavaScript stuff. They have some cool examples for like animated buttons. If you want to learn about a specific function, like the math.random built-in methods and all that. So they have a lot of really cool stuff that you can go to that's probably more user-friendly than MDN, but it doesn't cover as much details about it. But still really great, especially if you already understand the stuff and maybe you just need to go back in and see how you can apply it to something. I think that this is a great resource. So CodePen has always been one of those things that I love and hate at the same time because it doesn't always work out the way that you want it to. But at the same time, CodePen is really great for making like really quick mock-ups, just putting something up there, messing around with some code, building something awesome. Like there's always a bunch of really cool projects to inspire you over here as well. So a lot of designers and stuff like to go in here and play around with things, and it's a great place to find ideas. Like this right here is probably really cool. You click this button and changes the template. So that's really awesome right there. So, and that's something that you can get from CodePen, just looking around and just playing with a few things. So definitely a good website to take a look at and just to work on some early projects and stuff and do some quick mock-ups in. All right, so one really good site that I enjoy personally is I'm starting to enjoy LeetCode. Honestly, I spent so long away from it because I was using other stuff like HackerRanks, which HackerRanks is another good like algorithm challenge website. I was also using like quite a few, but once I ended up over here, I felt a lot more comfortable. I really like their IDE. I like their design. I feel like it's a lot more intuitive. I feel like their editor is less broken than the others. A lot of things make more sense. I can maneuver a lot better in here. I can find the levels that I wanna start at. And so I think that it's a lot more intuitive and user friendly than the other ones. Some other people might enjoy other code challenge sites. I prefer this one myself. Okay, and then another resource that you can go to is Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow has a lot of, basically it's the most confused place in the world, and I say that because people go to it in order to ask questions whenever something isn't working. And the only thing that I will say is if you go into Stack Overflow, make sure that you present as much information as possible to your issue. Give the error message, if you can, give the operating system that you're working on, give the versions of what you're working on. Try to give as much information as possible to the point where it might be obnoxious, because a lot of things can coincide into your issue. Don't just say, hey, my code broke, somebody help me. They're gonna need a lot more than that, or you might not really get the answer or an answer at all. So make sure that you're that if you do go into here, that you're participating. Try to answer a few questions if you know the answer. If you happen to go into something, or if you found a solution different to what somebody else posted, go ahead and post that in there. And the reason for it is because people are going to constantly go into this website, and they're going to have the same issues. They're going to have very similar issues to what you've had. And so going into Stack Overflow, they might find your solution useful. So it's kind of a way to document issues and to document like what other people did to solve them. So really, really great site to go to. I think it has a bad stigma for a lot of people being stuck up every now and then, but I also think that it has a good stigma of a lot of people who really generally just want to help. So really great website. Another few that I want to actually take a look at are not really websites. They're more like learning platforms, and I use this one whenever I was traveling around. I would use Solo Learn, which is an app. I don't know if they actually have an actual website that you use, or if it's strictly just for their app, but I think it's mostly just mobile. So as you can see, you can download it from Google Play and from the App Store. And so it has some really great resources to go to, and it's still growing, and it also has a lot of code challenges and stuff. But as you can see, it's pretty big. It's got 30,000 or 100,000, I don't know, 100,000 learners, and bunch of lessons and bunch of quizzes and different material. Has C++, Python 3, Java, so a whole bunch of cool stuff. And I highly recommend it, that if you are constantly on the go, maybe working a full-time job or something, and you have some downtime and you still want to continue your learning, this is definitely a great application that you can use for that. Just go ahead and download it. It's free to get into, and as it says here, available anytime, and it's free. So really great resource to hop into. And then we have another one called Grasshopper. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to find it here. Let's say Grasshopper App, maybe. Virtual business phone. I'm probably not gonna. Oh, wait. Yep, here it is. Nope. Hold on. Okay. So Grasshopper App is a very good learning app. So you can also try that out. As you see up here, it says learn the code for free. So any one of these, a lot of them are going to be geared towards more so having fun with your learning. And so I definitely recommend that you try that out. And then another one, and here it is, Mimo can also be pretty good for learning to code and stuff. So a lot of these apps are free. They might have in-game or in-app purchases and stuff like that, but definitely worth checking out, especially if you're on the go, because I remember when I was working a full-time job, I kept having like little spurts of downtime every now and then, and I couldn't really code at my job because their browser was like, I don't know, it was like the oldest browser of all time, and so I think it was still using like IE8 or something like that, and it was very intranet-ish, and so very limiting. So I could only use like the terminal or the little console thing down here. So these apps were really great for that. Definitely recommend doing that. As far as books, I might recommend a few later on for another video. I'll just leave it at this for now. I don't really like to recommend books to start off with. I personally recommend that you start off with free code camp, get as far as you can, do as much as you can, realize how big it is and that you are going to have to take some time in order to dig in and really get comfortable. But a lot of it is just reps and just like applying a lot of stuff to it, and then once you get deeper into everything, you can maybe get a book or something like that. But you just have to remember that that books are great, but they don't update with the technology. The websites do, and so just like how Flexbox changed, you know, some of the stuff from Flexbox changed, so did this website. They updated accordingly. And I believe if you go into like MDN and look up Flexbox, or W3 Schools and look up Flexbox, they'll pretty much direct you back to over here. So that's how good this is. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, everybody, how you guys feel about this material. If you have any other resources that you want to share, feel free to go ahead and put it in the comments below and share it, so maybe we could help other people find some great resources. And that is pretty much it. I'll see you guys next time.